WWE reportedly wants Stone Cold Steve Austin to make an in-ring return nearly 20 years after he last competed at WrestleMania 38 in Dallas, Texas. Is it going to happen? All this and more in today's WWE news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. So let's talk about Stone Cold Steve Austin. This was the big story that broke last night. I mean, there was some rumblings before Monday Night Raw, and then during Monday Night Raw is when this story about WWE Hall of Famer Stone Cold Steve Austin, arguably one of, if not the most popular professional wrestler in the history of pro wrestling, the big star in the Attitude Era. You can talk about The Rock, obviously being this huge star. You can talk about Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, all of these names. The Undertaker throughout professional wrestling history as being ginormous professional wrestling stars. But Stone Cold Steve Austin, even till this day, holds the record when it comes to merchandise, when it comes to ticket sales. One of, if not the most popular professional wrestler of all time. One of the biggest box office attractions in the history of professional wrestling. Last wrestled a match at WrestleMania 19 in 2003. A loss against The Rock. That was his final match. He was forced into an early in-ring retirement at just the age of 38 due to neck and knee issues and injuries. Stone Cold Steve Austin having one of the worst neck injuries of all time when it comes to the Owen Hart pile driver at SummerSlam in 1997. He was wrestling on borrowed time. That borrowed time led him to 2003 and he had to retire. Since then, Stone Cold Steve Austin has never wrestled a match since. He's been physically involved in certain situations, coming in, dropping people with Stone Cold Stunners, taking a couple of bumps here and there. Think of Brock Lesnar giving him an F5, think of Kane giving him a chokeslam, etc. That kind of stuff. Goldberg accidentally spearing him. He's taken some bumps, but he's never wrestled a match since. Could that be about to end when it comes to WrestleMania 38 in 2022? Now, this is the story that WWE Hall of Famer Stone Cold Steve Austin is reportedly being discussed for a potential in-ring return at WrestleMania 38. A new report from Fightful Select notes that WWE has made a significant overture towards Austin for a match at WrestleMania this year. There's no word on if Austin is even interested in wrestling his first match in almost 20 years, but WWE is hoping he will come out of retirement for the grandest stage of them all in his home state. Word from within WWE is that at the very least, most expect Steve Austin to have some kind of physical role at WrestleMania, but some do believe he will wrestle a match. Now, it was reported a few months back, we spoke about it here on the channel, that WWE wanted Austin to appear for some sort of Raw at WrestleMania in Texas. It's a given, considering it's his home state. The last time WrestleMania was in Texas, at this very stadium, WrestleMania 32, you had the moment where he came out with Shawn Michaels, Mick Foley, of course, legends of the Texas area for various reasons. They had their physical altercation with the League of Nations, etc. People assumed it was going to be something a bit similar to that. But now, reportedly, WWE don't just want him to be involved physically. They want him to come out of retirement for a match. Now, there's no word officially from WWE as to who the potential opponent could be. Brian Alvarez, though, has speculated on Twitter that Kevin Owens could be the opponent for Steve Austin at WrestleMania. Raw last night featured a promo from Kevin Owens, who insulted the people of Texas when talking about how he's glad he won't be wrestling a match at WrestleMania this year. Now, Owens, of course, uses the Stone Cold Stunner as his finisher and immediately fueled social media speculation on some sort of WrestleMania angle, not necessarily a match, but some kind of WrestleMania angle with Steve Austin after the promo on Raw. As I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Steve Austin has not wrestled a match since his loss to The Rock at WrestleMania 19 in 2003. He's made several appearances, of course, since then, but he was forced to retire from in-ring competition due to a serious neck injury and multiple knee injuries too. Now, we have some more news about this because obviously, if Stone Cold Steve Austin returns to in-ring action at WrestleMania 38, it's going to be one of the biggest stories, not just of the year, but of pro wrestling history, frankly. Now, Steve Austin, as I mentioned, he was contacted about a WrestleMania appearance, not a match, an appearance back in late December or early January. We spoke about it here. PW Insider, on the back of the Fightful Select report, is reporting that WWE first reached out to Austin in late December or early January to gauge his interest in doing something at WrestleMania. Something. We don't know if that's a match. We don't know if that's a promo. We don't know if that's a special referee. We don't know if that's the host. Who knows? Now, WWE reportedly pitched the idea of having Austin return to the ring for one night only and compete in his home state of Texas as a one-time send-off in front of a massive crowd. There was also the idea that Austin's involvement would help boost WrestleMania ticket sales. It was noted that in the weeks that have followed WWE reaching out, there has been zero confirmation within WWE that Austin has agreed to physically wrestle at WrestleMania. As I mentioned, WWE have reached out several times. Now, the talk of Austin possibly doing something physical at WrestleMania started making the rounds among some sources in early January, according to PW Insider, but it was described by one source as a, quote, Hail Mary idea, and it wasn't clear if anything would pan out beyond the idea just being tossed to Austin. The same source in early January hoped that an Austin return storyline would kick off at the Royal Rumble in late January, but of course, as we know, that hasn't happened. It's not happened as of right now. It was also noted that as of yesterday, Austin still hasn't committed to wrestling a match. Now, the current Kevin Owens vs. Texas storyline has led to more speculation and rumors of Austin possibly doing something with Owens at WrestleMania 38, especially considering how Austin and both Owens used the stunner. Finally, when it does come to this as well, there has been a little bit of, and I think this is a stretch here, but reportedly, well, it's not reportedly, it's fact, High Spots visited Stone Cold Steve Austin's ranch, and in, when it was last August, he's got a ranch in Nevada. He moved to Las Vegas last year, or a couple of years ago, whenever it was, and constructed a new wrestling ring. He does have a wrestling ring on his property. While it's not known if Austin had a ring at his original ranch in Texas, he did take a few bumps on Straight Up Steve Austin a few years ago. Austin moved from Texas to Nevada in 2018, as I mentioned. Now, last April, on the Talk Is Jericho podcast, Steve Austin was asked by Jericho if he'd ever considered realistically making an in-ring comeback. This is what Austin said, quote, "Man, not really. I think Vince tried talking me into coming back a couple of times, but you know, Chris, I love the business so much. I love it more than anybody else. I can only speak for myself, but I love the damn business, and it hurt me so much to leave it. And to me, going back for one more match, man, why? What am I proving? What are they going to remember? It ain't about the money. It took me a long time, damn near 3 years to get over the fact I left the business." Austin added, returning to the ring for just one match would be, quote, anticlimactic. He said, quote, "To get hooked on it again just for one match and to me, it would have been so anticlimactic. Go out there and do it, and then whatever the finish was, and then the people go home. But what does it all mean in the big picture? Stone Cold had a comeback, and the match was a 3.5 Meltzer 5-star rating. If it ain't good enough, it ain't good enough. And even if I crushed it, what would it mean? I just had to say, man, stay away, and I've stayed away." So, to be honest with you, when I saw this story, and I know a lot of people are talking about it, obviously. A lot of people are talking about it, and a lot of people are excited about the prospect of Stone Cold Steve Austin possibly making an in-ring return at WrestleMania 38. And I don't want to be the guy that's a Debbie Downer. I don't want to be the guy that's, saying, oh, it's not going to happen. And I must preface this by saying, I believe the reports from Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful and PW Insider are accurate because they are very reputable, and they wouldn't be willing to stake their reputation or put their reputation on the line for something that isn't true, in my opinion. So the way that I look at it is that WWE, yeah, they've reached out to Stone Cold Steve Austin for a match at WrestleMania. That's true. That's probably true, and because they've done it several times. But there's a difference between WWE reaching out and saying, "Steve, do you want to come in one night only, have your one final match as your send-off of your career?" There's a difference between that and Steve Austin actually doing it. There's a difference between Steve Austin actually wrestling a match, whatever that match would look like at WrestleMania. I just really struggle to believe, after all this time, after all these years, when there have been opportunities for him to come back for bigger and better matches when he was younger, I find it difficult to believe that in 2022, yes, it's Texas, yes, it's a stadium, yes, it's whatever. I find it difficult to believe that that would change now. What has changed between now and then? Nothing. And frankly, and this isn't a disrespect to Kevin Owens, I'm a huge Kevin Owens fan, but if Stone Cold Steve Austin is going to have one more match, and the guy's, 58 years old, something like that at this point, even then I would say, man, what Steve Austin are we getting? There's no doubt he's in great shape, but he's still not Stone Cold Steve Austin when he was 38 or when he was in his mid-30s or when in the peak of his powers in the Attitude Era. He's just not. I would look at it and say, if Steve Austin's going to come back for one match, if it's not Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, or John Cena, he shouldn't do it. Because let's say he does have just one more match left in him. There's only one left. His bump card is unbelievably full. Some people thought it was completely full anyway. But if he's got one more match left in him, that should be built to. They should take a year to build it, and it should be against, as I mentioned, Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, or John Cena. One of those three, because they're the dream matches. Again, no disrespect to Kevin Owens. I'm a big fan. But if Steve Austin's going to have a match, and I mean a proper match, and like he said, he loves the business so much, I just find it really difficult to believe that after nearly 20 years, and considering the circumstances of his injury, his neck was so messed up. When you talk about and you hear these interviews of Kurt Angle and Edge and people talking about their neck every single time, they say, I went to the neck doctor in Pittsburgh and they said, man, your neck's really bad. But the worst neck was Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I struggle to believe he'd risk it all in terms of his health. At this point of his life, at 58 years of age, I struggle to believe that after having opportunities to wrestle in the past, CM Punk, John Cena, Hulk Hogan, those names, I struggle to believe that now he would come back for a match against Kevin Owens at WrestleMania. That wasn't the main event and wasn't the marquee match of the show. And we're in February right now, and and this storyline, nobody even knows it's going to happen or not. All of that to me, as a seasoned pro wrestling fan, I just say I don't buy it. If this was just after WrestleMania this year, and they said next year at WrestleMania, Steve Austin's going to face Roman Reigns in the main event, I could see that happening. You've got a year to build to it. It's a year for Steve to get ready. There's a year to figure things out. He's going to be the main event. He's going to sell out a stadium, all that kind of stuff. To me, at this point, this reeks of WWE. We know the ticket sales are what they are. We're seeing all of these offers, the buy one, get one frees, and the special offers, all that kind of stuff. This seems to me, WWE, they absolutely have made Steve an offer, or they've certainly reached out and said, do you want to do something? Steve Austin's going to be at WrestleMania. I have no doubts about that. And he might get physical at WrestleMania in the same way he did at WrestleMania 32, when he came out, gave people a couple of stunners. Even when he did that, he had to get surgery on his shoulder because he tore his rotator cuff punching Rusev in the face. So who knows what would happen if he tried to work a match. I don't doubt that Steve Austin's going to be at WrestleMania. I don't doubt that Steve Austin might get physical at WrestleMania. But the idea of him working a match, and even if it was a situation where it was like The Rock at WrestleMania 32, when he says, I'm going to have a match, and then he rips off his pants, and there he's having a match with Eric Rowan. People would, if Steve Austin did that at WrestleMania, people would say, well, it wasn't really a match. It'd be great if it could be a proper match. You know what I mean? Again, to get back to my point, it reeks of WWE going, ticket sales are what they are. We have made Steve an offer, and we are in discussions with Austin to do something at WrestleMania. If we get this story out there, it's the CM Punk effect for Rampage last year. We'll try and sell out a stadium based on a rumor. And whether or not that rumor comes true, we don't care, because at that point the stadium will be sold out. People may say to that, but surely they would care if the fans aren't happy that Steve Austin doesn't wrestle a match. Surely they would care if the crowd are disappointed that Steve Austin doesn't do anything that physical at WrestleMania. Historically, WWE doesn't. If the stadium's packed out, they will still say there's more people there than there actually is, and that's just why they'll go with it. So for me, it reeks of, not a case of we're going to have Steve Austin wrestle because it will sell out the stadium. To me, it sounds like we're struggling with the tickets, and we'll just put the rumor out there that maybe Steve Austin might wrestle and see if that boosts the ticket sales. And maybe that's me being very dismissive, and maybe that's me being a bit negative. I just really struggle to buy this one. I really do. And again, that's not me saying that the story isn't true, because I think the story is true. But there's a big jump between WWE saying to Steve Austin, let's have a match at WrestleMania, and there's a big jump between Steve Austin saying yes. They've asked him several times for bigger and better matches, and he said no. So I don't see the difference. I don't see what the difference is in 2022 when Steve Austin's 58 years old. That's just my opinion, and maybe we'll hear more about it in the coming days, but that's how I feel about that one. A couple other things before we wrap things up, because the big story is Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously. Austin Theory reacted to Brock Lesnar's selfie from Monday Night Raw. So last night featured an in-ring segment ahead of the WWE title elimination chamber match. Obviously, it had the likes of Theory, Brock Lesnar, Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins, AJ Styles. Featured a segment or part of the segment where Brock gave his cowboy hat to Austin Theory. He took a selfie, and then Brock attacked Austin Theory, gave him an F5, and then took another selfie with him. Afterwards, Theory said it was totally worth it. I thought it was fun. Brock Lesnar, look, he did an interview on the Pat McAfee show yesterday, and this Brock Lesnar's great. I've said it several times. Babyface Brock, Cowboy Brock, whatever you want to call it, it's awesome. It absolutely is awesome. And I'm a big fan of it. I really am. We saw a bit of a change to the WWE intro last night before Raw as well. Obviously, the intro is Then, Now, Forever Together, but there's a new voice. There's a mystery male voice that can be heard narrating the Then, Now, Forever Together prior to the show. Now, it's yet to be confirmed, but several fans on social media believe that John Cena is the narrator. Well, that would make sense, wouldn't it? It would. That's not obviously the first time that we've heard someone narrate the intro for WWE, because they've had all sorts. The Power is Back was one. Oh, which was the one that... I can't remember what it was, but there have been a few that have done the narration. I'm totally blanking at the time of recording. You can let me know in the comment section below. It's like the best in something. I can't recall, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. We'll move on. Alexa Bliss is returning to the ring at Elimination Chamber. Alexa Bliss is finally returning to the ring on Saturday. Now, of course, she's been featured in a number of vignettes recently in Therapy, following up her storyline with Lily the Doll. Now, the latest vignette aired during Raw last night, and the doctor determined that Alexa Bliss is finally cured, at least as much as she can be. Bliss was ready to leave Lily behind, but the doctor told her as long as she keeps the Lily nearby, she will be cured and can live somewhat of a normal life. The doctor gave Bliss a replica Lily doll, but stuffed it with the remaining pieces of the original Lily. So Lily isn't going away, it would appear, considering that she's a big merchandise mover. But Bliss is joining Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley, Nikki Ash, Doudrop, and Liv Morgan as the participants in the Women's Elimination Chamber match on Saturday in Saudi Arabia. Of course, the winner will challenge Becky Lynch, or Lita, but Becky Lynch, for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania. I think it's likely, one would think, that Bianca Belair is going to win that one, but you never know. With all of this Alexa Bliss stuff going on at the moment, it's entirely possible she could win that one. Tommaso Ciampa was on Monday Night Raw last night as well. He'll be back on Main Event this week, but he also appeared on the Raw broadcast to continue the feud with Dolph Ziggler. Now, before the show, Ciampa had a match against T-Bar, but he also, as I mentioned, appeared on the Raw broadcast from Indianapolis. He joined the announcers during the tag team match that saw the Street Profits defeat the Dirty Dogs. Ciampa had an exchange with Ziggler at ringside to play off their brawl from last week's NXT 2.0 episode. Who knows if he's going to show up tonight, Dolph Ziggler? There's certainly a possibility there. I don't know if this is their way of I guess, moving Ciampa slowly to Raw. I don't know. I've speculated that he would be going to the main roster pretty soon, considering his main event matches, but we'll wait and see. Either way, Ciampa on the red brand, I'm all for it. Finally, we have a match also confirmed for Elimination Chamber, and that is Rey Mysterio versus The Miz. This has been a thing ongoing for the last couple of weeks, hasn't it? This will be the first Miz versus Mysterio TV single match since November 13, 2018, which Mysterio won. This will actually be their second match in Saudi Arabia, though, as The Miz defeated Mysterio at Crown Jewel on November 2nd, 2018. I'll be honest, I really don't have any, affinity or care really about this match or feud, but it's, it's two established WWE stars, veterans that I'm sure the crowd over there in Saudi Arabia will love. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Really interested to hear your thoughts about this Stone Cold Steve Austin story. So be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment below. And I'll speak for you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.